Dead by Daylight has a problem. And I don't really think it's just a balancing problem. I think it's a problem with their identity. Now, what makes Dead by Daylight different from a lot of other asymmetrical horror games is very simple. The killer is supposed to be the power role, not the unbeatable role, and not the guaranteed win role, the power role. And I think when that starts to disappear, something important about Dead by Daylight disappears with it. See, a lot of asymmetrical horror games eventually become about fighting back against the monster. The monster gets stunned, controlled, bullied, or turned into just another player in the match. Now, I understand Dead by Daylight has some of these properties in it with flashlights and pallets, but Dead by Daylight isn't really built around that. As the survivor, you're not trying to kill the killer. You're just simply trying to survive them. This one design choice changes everything about the asymmetrical horror franchise. It changes how chases feel, it changes how generators feel, and it changes how rescues feel. It also changes the emotional rhythm of the entire match. Even when nothing is happening, something is happening. You're either wondering where the killer is, you're wondering if they're coming back, you're wondering if that save is worth it, you're wondering if greed is about to cost you the game. That pressure in the background is a huge part of what makes Dead by Daylight feel like Dead by Daylight. And that's why the killer, I should say, has to remain a very real threat in most of the games. Now, when I say that, I don't mean killers should just be overpowered. I don't think that killers should be, crazy dominant all the time, because that's usually where the whole conversation about the game goes wrong. A lot of people hear killers should be the power role and immediately think that means survivors should feel hopeless. That's not what I mean at all. That's actually the farthest thing from the truth. Survivors need the opposite. They need to feel like they still have a little bit of dog in the fight. They need to believe their decisions still matter. Good pathing, good rotations, smart saves, reading the pressure, knowing when to heal, knowing when not to heal, knowing when to commit to a generator and when to leave. All of these matter because it gives survivors agency. And as survivors stop feeling like their decisions matter, the tension disappears as well. That's why I think Dead by Daylight is the best when both things exist at the same time. The killers feel dangerous. The survivors still feel like they can turn the match around. That balance is where some of the best matches happen. And I think looking at other asymmetrical games, we can actually see how they did this wrong and exactly explain why this matters. Let's take a look at Friday the 13th, for example, the game. Survivors could actually kill Jason. Now, I know at first this sounded really cool. It created, huge moments, exciting moments, and it felt empowering at the time. But it also changes the relationship between the survivors and the killer, because now the killer isn't just a threat. The killer can become the target. A lot of these games are built around cat and mouse, right? The hunter and the hunted. And the killer is meant to be the hunter. That's just the way these games work. If you don't like that, you need to go and explore other games, because that's exactly what this should be. The same thing with Dead by Daylight, same thing with all the other games. But the teams could coordinate removing Jason's mask, using Pamela's sweater, setting up stuns, and finishing the kill, which would basically mean a free win. That team, and it took teamwork, and it created memorable moments, but emotionally it changed everything. They weren't surviving the killer anymore. Sometimes they were even hunting him, and once that started to happen, the power imbalance completely shifted. This is a big problem, and this is what I actually believe, aside from the legal issues, was the downfall of Friday the 13th. Is you still had people that played this game very casually and played it for the way it was intended, which is survivors will just survive. But the problem is that as soon as people realized, or this came out, that you could kill him, there were floods of teams that didn't care about surviving it normally. They just immediately went, got Pamela's sweater, setting up the stuns, and they finished the kill because it was a very easy way. Now let's take a look at another asymmetrical horror game in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. One of the very early complaints people had was how the family member could get repeatedly stun looped. Now, again, at first, this was fun, this was chaotic, and it was satisfying. It was really fun to watch. Made for a lot of really great moments on YouTube and everyone in your friend group. But after a while, it starts hurting the thing that asymmetrical horror depends on. Because if the supposed threat spends too much time getting controlled, bullied, or shut down, they stop feeling like a threat. And that matters more than a lot of people think. The point of asymmetrical horror isn't just that the sides are different. It's that they feel different. The killer should create pressure in the game. He should control emotional space. The killer should make survivors respect mistakes. That doesn't mean survivors shouldn't have counterplay, though. They absolutely should. And counterplay is very different from removing the killer's role as the source of danger. I honestly think that modern day Dead by Daylight sometimes struggles with this. Sometimes newer killers feel powerful in a way that feels more uncontrollable than threatening. They feel oppressive, they can feel frustrating, and they can feel mentally exhausted to play against. Right? We're talking about the Kanekys when they first came out. We're talking about Legion when we first came out. Sometimes killers can feel like they're not just threatening. They're not just a way of, oh my god, he's going to come get me. They are immediately, as soon as you spawn in, there is nothing I can do. I don't even feel like nurses have this. Because I feel like, the majority of nurses that play the game aren't super elf level amazing nurses. So if you learn strategies of looping and strategies of all that stuff, honestly it is something that you can counter. But especially when new killers come out and there isn't a very distinct way to counter them, it can feel almost like it's just oppressive and frustrating. And I understand that feeling that survivors have. It's just mentally exhausting. There's no point at that moment, or at least it feels like there's no point in that moment for even trying. It's just here we go again. Behavior is screwed up again, right? This isn't really the same thing as fear in the same way. This isn't fear. This is just exhaustion, right? Because we're not looking for the same fear of actually being in that situation, or we're not looking for the same fear of like a horror movie would give you, right? It's a different type of fear because it is a video game, but you're in it. You have a little bit of stake in the game. You got a little bit of pressure on your back. And on the other side, some older killers can feel so understood and so resolved that experienced survivors don't really feel the pressure anymore, right? Like we're looking at Bubba here, even Wraith, right? We're looking at like when you hear that terror radius of Bubba, and in this video there should be a little bit of clips of me actually playing against a Bubba. It just feels like there's no pressure. Like when I hear a Bubba, when I hear that terror radius and I hear the chainsaw, I don't feel any pressure. Maybe if it was Epidemic or if it was like a top level Bubba, yes, absolutely. But I don't really feel that pressure anymore. And I also think that matters. I think that's a big thing, right? Because for me, one of the best feelings in DBD is that sudden uh-oh moment. Like what I think the most is when Oni hits his power and you hear that roar. You're cooked. Unless you are right near something, you are absolutely cooked. And I think that is the best example of when the entire match changes, right? It's a complete emotional shift. The tempo switches, people reposition, people panic. Suddenly, every single looping mistake you can ever make matters. And the safe areas don't feel so safe because he is so fast, so powerful, so strong, and can completely change the trajectory of the game, right? It creates all this urgency. It creates this really important feeling like this matters. And it forces you to make decisions. And it reminds you, as a survivor, that the killer is still a threat and he still runs the show. It doesn't mean it's over, because you can absolutely counterplay an Oni in power. You can loop an Oni power for 5 gens. It just means those stakes are a little bit higher. And that's when this game gets fun, right? When the killer doesn't feel threatening enough. The match can start to feel like it's objective racing, right? You are racing the objective. You are just run generators, take the most efficient routes, reset, you win every time. And some games definitely feel like that. And sometimes the killer starts feeling more like a timer than an actual source of fear, right? I don't really think that's what makes DBD special. I don't think the objective of the generators or the generators get out is what makes it special. Dead by Daylight is at its best when the killer controls the emotional pressure of the match. And not because they can automatically win, but because they actually matter, right? The killer being there matters when you are facing against a good killer or a killer like an Oni. There are a bunch of killers, right? And if you have a killer that you think that this matters, so put it down in the comment section down below, because I really do want to see other people's opinion on this, right? The goal really of the killer shouldn't be dominating every game, right? Like Momo's 1900 whatever. That's not the goal of the game, and I don't even think that should ever really be possible. I don't think you should be able to win 19 games in a row. I think that's macro and micro abusing to a point to where it's no longer fun, right? The survivors shouldn't just feel helpless, right? Which is why they nerfed Blight, because a lot of times you'd feel helpless. But the goal should always be to make sure the killer remains powerful while the survivors still have a fight, right? Like if you look at a trapper or whatever, he doesn't feel powerful at all. Yes, you can get a 4K easily with a trapper, and like for example, with basement trapper, he all of a sudden he is very powerful, and you can feel the pressure. But even then, you just do gens, right? You get on the gens, finish the gens if you really want to win. So you still have that willingness to fight, right? That's where that tension lies. That's where that comeback moments live. That's where that excitement feels, right? And I honestly think that that's one of the biggest reasons DBD is still working after all these years.